For that, that's like 95% margin. I really like about Amazon first thing in the morning. I think there's something very humanistic about catching your prey. Like with Amazon, when I source, I am directly making money first thing in the morning.
Just got used to the schedule of until I spent $2,000 or $3,000 on Amazon, I would not eat.
That's probably an average 7 days a week. That's not just like, right? And consistency is so much more valuable than spurts of intensity, in my opinion, or anything. You want to be like, the simplest way to become a millionaire, the fact of the matter is, money is essential in the world that we live in.
Since you have an account who's really doing all this for you, you have no idea how much you're making.
I show you orange bars of 100K a month. That means my profit is 15, and that doesn't mean my bank account gets 15.
And I know a lot of these guys behind closed doors, and that's what I see out of a lot of them.
And I'm at a point I don't know what to do. Keep a product finder. To me, it's the move.
It's going down that type of stuff. It's just, there's no way you don't win because you just have such an advantage over everybody else, and you have to have some type of competitive advantage here.
And that's why I think test buying is so underrated. And it's like, you're literally, if you're not willing to put up $100, $200 to find out if you can move 5 to 10 of these, you're at a huge disadvantage. Because
we're talking about which it's late into the podcast and people might have even turned it off by now, but this is like the most important part you can take about Amazon.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Side Hustle Experiment podcast. Today we have Jonathan, aka Duke Does Amazon. He's done millions of dollars on Amazon. He's doing it part-time, runs a beer tour business, which I'm super interested in learning about because I love craft beer. He has a family. This is someone I talk to almost daily. And he has really unique ways of sourcing, insights on Amazon. So we're super excited to have him here. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. Like you said, I know we speak very frequently. I respect both you guys tremendously. So I look forward to our convo.
Yeah, I was just thinking the other day when he recommended you as a guest, I was like, yeah, I would love to have that guy on first because out of all the podcasts I've done, yours is my favorite I've done, which I never told you that probably, but yeah, because you asked me some questions that were like, why do you want to make this much money? And that's I never get asked that. I usually, what do you recommend for beginners? Dude,
yeah.
Like I want to know the deep stuff, and you like pulled that out, and I'm like, that was like by far the best one I've done.
So totally, man. I mean, well beyond Amazon or even business in general, like I can talk life, you know what I mean? And like that to me gets me going. So I appreciate the compliment. You're not the first person that said that. I think also after doing a few, you just get tired of it myself. And also I'm in the trenches. So like the general questions become stale. I want to learn more about the people and certain niches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he's like, have you ever been on his podcast? I was like, it's funny you should say that because I was the first one.
That's right. That's right, John, you were.
So do you want to so we don't really like to do like the whole like how do you get started because everyone has like kind of a similar story.
Right.
But I know yours is a little more interesting. If I understand it, you had a beer tour company and then COVID happened and then you started selling on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah. So repping some hoodie action today. But yeah, so long story short, I have bought and sold things as long as time. I'm 36 now, so like before it was Facebook and it was Craigslist and things like that. So I've always had the idea and the concept down pat. I kind of got away from it for whatever reason. Started a tour company, as you mentioned, and then that was halted during COVID. And in the back of my mind, this whole time, I always wanted to get with the modern times of flipping stuff, just because I've always had a knack for it, as long, from early teenage days, from like textbooks up to homes, and it's all the same. You buy low and you sell high. Like that's really the gist of it. And there's data, right? And so anyway, I dove into YouTube, came across Amazon FBA, started doing RA, did that primarily for 2 years, moved states. I knew that eventually I wanted to get away from RA for the typical reasons. And even though anybody can succeed with any model, and I was moving states. And so I transitioned to OA, and that's pretty much what I've been doing exclusively for the last 2 years, give or take.
Cool.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, why did you start the like beer business originally? Like what did you do before that? Why'd you start that?
Good question. So I went to college, I graduated, I had a corporate job right out of that. Great first job, learned a lot. But very early on in my journey, and I always preface like, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, better or worse. For me, I knew from a young age, I just couldn't play the game, right? I could
Mm.
not play the game. And I remember something vividly from my first yearly review. I did everything they asked for me. I definitely produced. I had like a marketing position, by the way, for a pretty cool restaurant chain that started at my college and has now grown on to hundreds of units. It's called Tijuana Flats. It's like in the southeast. It's like a
Oh, I've
Chipotle.
heard of that before.
So I was on board early in their journey, did everything they asked. I was making like in the 30s right out of school, saving everything, living with mom. And I remember at my yearly review, I was basically told I should be thankful I got a 5% raise because most people get a 3. And at that point, I had this moment of, um, as long as I don't do a horrible enough job to get fired, it doesn't matter how good of a job I do, right? And by the way, that's combined with me always having side hustles and businesses. So then I jumped from that to a different job. While I'm at that second job, it's another great job. Outside sales, decent pay, company car, like a Toyota Highlander. I'm in my mid 20s, and I started a mobile auto detailing business on the side. Okay, and this is where I made a huge mistake. And that was I went cold turkey. I was tired of the corporate thing. And I knew corporate was never long term, but looking back, I should have leveraged that sweet gig as long as
Mm.
possible. Start the detailing thing. Um, then one last time, I make a jump back into the corporate wall. I've built up the detailing thing a little bit, and it was such a sweet gig. I mean, this was probably late 20s, making 70K, no 9 to 5, great bonuses. It was for a wine distributor, free wine. Like it was sweet. And I couldn't play the game. I just couldn't play the game. And that's when I knew that was going to be it for me. And by the way, at this time, I had bought and sold a couple homes. The market kept going up. I lived in places while I fixed them up. So I wasn't blowing it, right? And then I just eventually just went cold turkey. And I got to answer your question. I just felt all this was relative. Um, at this point, I knew I wanted to do my own thing, but I wanted to be more passionate about it. Okay. I love food and beverage. I didn't want to take on a brick and mortar. I really like the mobile business concept in general. Minimal overhead, prove the concept without taking out massive loans. Like I just used my own money, bought a used bus, got started. I do love craft beer. I love breweries. I love coffee shops. And long story short, had a couple light bulb moments. I said, I think this concept will work in my area. And now we've been going for, gosh, 7 years. I have a second location in Asheville. We're going to open a third. And then from there, I either have to, I have a couple of decisions to make. The thought is to franchise, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
That's
That's
awesome. Yeah. I feel like you solved a ton of problems with the whole craft beer
Yeah.
bus because whenever we're going to, when me and our girlfriend are traveling or I'm doing something for Amazon, like we're always going to stay an extra couple days or get there early. And we're always like, where are where are the best breweries? And you go on like an app like Untapped or you go
Yeah.
on Google and if you like craft beer, any review, it's hit or miss. Like
Yeah.
there are just some really good breweries, and there are just some ones that aren't. And typically, from what I've experienced, the coolest breweries typically have the worst beer. It's these kind of like down and out, like you're at a brewery and you're like, this isn't that great, and you turn to the person next to you, they're like, you gotta go to this one, and
Yeah.
that's like the one that's like not on any of the lists,
Yeah.
and then they just like, oh yeah, we never heard of this one either. So I think that like just being able to like take people and kind of I guess that is like the heart of entrepreneurship in a nutshell is kind of solving other people's problems
Right.
and kind of bringing them like this great experience.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. And it's funny you say that. Like I'm not a beer snob. I equate a brewery like think of a spectrum. On the left-hand side is a coffee shop and the right-hand side is a bar. I think a brewery skews closer to the coffee shop. Like it's very
Yeah,
rare that someone's hammered at a brewery. They're
great.
paying a certain price for the beer, there's a lot cheaper ways to get hammered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like to me, I've always enjoyed, I'm social, but I'm not into the club scene, the bar scene. So like that's how it spoke to me at least. And I love cooking and food. So like it's kind of like I respect people that do anything with their hands, whether it be a baker or a roaster, a craft beer shop, whatever. So that's kind of how, that's how I dove into. I will say, because I don't want to sugarcoat something, and I think this is an important message for anyone that's entrepreneurial. I do think that the concept of pursuing your passion is a crock. I really, really think it's a crock. And I'm living proof. The fact of the matter is, think about this. I want you to think of your favorite meal, your favorite people, your favorite day. If you had that every single day, and not only that, you had to do it in order to earn income, you would get tired of that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think about like what fits the lifestyle you want. And I'm all about trying things, but and by no means do I hate this by any means. But I do think it's important that like, at least for my opinion, the concept of like find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, I still have to file sales tax, I still have to do marketing, I
Yeah.
still have to do HR. Like I understand you can outsource that stuff, but it's not just like, for my example, just going to the best craft breweries and the highlights of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you still have
It's
to do all the
broken
nitty
down
gritty.
buses, people aren't happy,
Right.
like all this other stuff.
Yeah, and
So
how much, if you don't mind saying this,
yeah,
how much margin do you make on the revenue from that business? Like, is it a high? Because the only reason I ask is because, as we all notoriously know, Amazon's got
yeah,
these huge numbers, but your profit is just a little bitty pinch of it. So I wonder, like, a
yeah.
real life business, how that would go.
Good. Yeah, it's actually really, it's a good question, and I think, let me just preface, it's really been eye-opening because we have a relatively low margin business in Amazon, right?
Mm.
And what I do with the tours is very high margin. To give you just a real quick snapshot, we basically have two options at the end of the day. Some people just say, "Hey, I don't know if you guys checked it out, but like I'm very bullish on branding, so I've invested in like wrapping the vehicles. It really stands out. It's fun,
They look
whatever."
really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. So, to me, that's really important. So, some people just rent us out to go brewery hopping. They're like, listen, we don't need a tour. We don't need behind the scenes. Just give us a fun, personable driver with an Instagram worthy bus and, provide a great service. So, for that, that's like 95% margin. It's like they're paying us for the bus, right?
Right.
For driving them around. So you have gas and labor. So not 95%. I'm kind of just emphasizing a point. It's a very high margin. The other one is a guided tour. You pay us by person, so not by the hour. We go to 3 different breweries. We include your flight of beer, behind the scenes tour, etc. If we charge 89 and our cost might be 25 to give you some
Wow.
context. So also there, what's that? $65 profit on 90. So like give or take 70% pre gas and labor. So even if we want to be conservative, very conservative, because you're going to have insurance, you're going to have maintenance, 50% margin, 60% margin, but it's not a volume game. You're not going to run a Tuesday afternoon tour very often. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And is there any reason that you didn't not try to turn it more into a volume game, but like I'm sure there's like certain things maybe like adding to the marketing and things to grow that business, but obviously you've decided that half your time or whatever amount of time needs to be
Yeah.
allocated towards Amazon because it's probably well worth your time. So I'm sure you did the numbers there. What made you think, well, why not drop the Amazon and go like full in on like growing this beer whatever tour company huge?
Yeah. Good question. So, since we're going there, I'll give you a little more background. Right before COVID, I did make the decision, the financial investment. We're legally able to franchise. Okay, that happened during COVID. All right, but let me explain this to you. I think this is the best way I can explain it. Let's say I started, instead of the tour company, I started a coffee shop in my town, right? If that had success, I could open one 3 miles away. And if that had success, another 3 miles, right? And I can now be in the same proximity, if all goes well, of 20 coffee shops, and I can oversee them. Johnny calls out of work. I can pull someone from here, right? with the tour company concept of what we do, it only works in one per market and not nearly every market, right? So for instance, like I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. The closest one from here is probably Charlotte, North Carolina would be my next logical one, right? And what I've come to realize because of that volume game discussion, the B markets are okay, but like being in Asheville, it's doing really well. So it's and my bet one back home was like a C market. I just didn't know any better. That was my hometown, West Palm Beach, Florida,
Okay.
right? So I say all that to say very quickly, if I have 5 locations, I'm not there to see Johnny when the, help, even if I hire great people and pay them well, I'm not in the market. And that's why the growth model is going to be franchising, where it's owner operators that have skin in the game in their hometown, as opposed to me trying to grow it without being there. Or, there's a million ways to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's kind of my thought process. If I'm going to grow it, it's going to be franchising because then I can teach from afar.
Yeah, it kind of to me it seems like it plays into the whole lifestyle thing you were talking about.
Right.
For you to grow that like wide like that, your life would probably suck. You
Yeah.
probably work like
Yeah.
80 hours a week to do that. So yeah,
Right.
that makes a ton of sense. I didn't even think about it like that.
If
Yeah.
I was younger, I could even see like, I mean, like real young, go live 6 months in a city, get it off the ground, go to another city and do that. But like,
Mm.
I have a kid now. Like, I don't even want to do that. But a younger me would have if I knew to start it younger. So just everyone's like you said, the lifestyle thing, different chapters. Um, but yeah, I mean, the goal is to grow it with finding the right owner operators.
Sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So how do you, I guess, balance your time between this and Amazon? Like, how do you decide how much you want to allocate to each, and kind of what does your Amazon business look like?
Yeah. Well, with Amazon, I'll give you like a pretty something. This has happened in the last 6 to 8 months. I essentially source. I get up. I'll just walk you through my day for the most part. I'm up at like 5:30. I hit the gym. There's a local coffee shop by me that opens at 6:30. I'm typically there sourcing or working on my Amazon business, sourcing and maybe handling some other stuff. Um, all the mundane and admin, prep center sheet, etc., till 9:30, give or take. Now, some days if I'm cruising and I don't need to be home for the kid for something, I might extend that. But once I hit that 3 hour threshold anyway, I'm fried. I need to regroup anyway. But I think I was explaining this to my partner, and I was telling her, what I really like about Amazon first thing in the morning, I think there's something very humanistic about catching your prey. Like with Amazon, when I source, I am directly making money first thing in the morning, right? And
Yeah.
then that gives me a little bit of peace to do admin, content, beer bus, right? Stuff like that. So I really, really like sourcing first thing in the morning, also because I am a morning person. That's how I'm wired. And then from there, every day, my significant other she works from home. We don't have like a nanny or anything, so like depending on her schedule, I have to be available for the kid. Um, the beer bus, at this point, I kind of just one really nice thing about it, bookings happen online. I'm there to answer questions. It's kind of autopilot, right?
Mm.
I've put in the work up front to now be in that position. So it's funny because as I'm saying this, like my days, I never feel like I get enough. I never have enough time. But as I say this, I can't think of the
Yeah.
things that I do. You know what I mean? Um, Amazon to me, uh, it's a priority. I like doing it. Like there's nothing I need to be doing with the beer bus at 6:30 a.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, like I don't take days off, but it's not like I'm a workaholic. It's just everything just flows into my life. I'm not set on weekends off, nights off. Like I'm with the kid during the day, the night, the weekends. So like I'm just kind of muddling it all together. And to be honest, it's a constant work in progress, but I feel like I have a pretty good balance. Like I'm not burnt out by any means, and I certainly think I'm giving it all I got.
Yeah, no, I feel like there are a couple of things there for me. Like I feel like that's a big misconception too. When you're just like, I don't consider it work, and I don't either. And I feel that's kind of like a hard misconception for a lot of people who may be working a 9 to 5, or like I've haven't really been working that much because I've been traveling for the holidays and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people, me and Drew were actually talking about before this, how much work this podcast actually takes. Like we're
Hmm.
used to just kind of doing live videos and it's done. We're doing a lot of pre-production, post-production, chopping stuff up. I don't think it doesn't feel like work for me. Like I can't
Yeah.
speak for Drew, but we're just having a blast, dude. We're texting each other almost every hour. But oh, did you see this? Oh, we should do this. Oh, we should have this person. Oh, we should do like it's just this whole. I don't consider it work. That like
Yeah.
I don't know, DM you a link and schedule this and do all this other stuff. And like yeah, maybe one day it gets outsourced, but like I just can't see a time where that is. And I do also think it's interesting too. Um, is that you mentioned that you only put 3 hours of work in. Obviously, we'll put this in context. It's not every. I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes you say something general, like "oh, I only work through." Like no, you. It's like no, it's just a general kind
Yeah.
of context. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people think you have to source 10 hours a day, or like Kohl's is having a sale, like you got to pull an all nighter and this and that. And like I've been there before, and I usually make terrible buying decisions when I'm not sleeping or I just can't think
Yeah.
about stuff. And then kind of the last thing for me, and I'll let Drew say what he wants to say, is I really like the idea of getting after it in the morning. I've tried
Oh yeah.
all sorts of things where it's like I'm gonna. So for me, I used to go to the gym in the morning. I just don't like going to the gym in the morning. I like to wake up and kind of work on the Amazon business because that's where I'm the sharpest. It's either Amazon or content because if I have to come up with like something creative for content, like I don't have to be creative to like post an Instagram post because I already know
Right.
what's going on. But like if I'm trying to think of something to do special for the podcast or like ideas, like I want to be fresh for that. But there's just something in my mind not having like Amazon holding over, like being that held over my head, being like, oh, like you haven't found anything today yet. It's like, oh, when are you going to source? I always felt like that was over my head. And it's like, oh, if I just get that done first, nothing else really matters. And it
Yeah.
just makes it a lot easier for me. So I really like that idea of just like getting it after in the morning. And for me, like spending the 2 hours in the gym, it's like I'll do that at like 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock when I kind of need that break after the 3 hours of whatever I just did.
Yeah.
But I found that interesting that you kind of said that.
Yeah, I'm a large proponent of that. I tell people
Yeah.
exactly what you just said. I say you should get up in the morning, and I even extend it more than just like hunt your prey, but do not eat food until you spend
Yeah.
X amount of money. Like maybe that's like tricking us into some primal instinct, but that's what I would do. I intermittent fast every morning, not because I'm some intermittent fast guy, because I've just got used to the schedule of until I spent 2 grand or 3 grand on Amazon, I would not eat. So I like
Yeah.
force myself to, you have to sit at that computer and just pound the caffeine until you find enough stuff.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. It's like I have to hunt that like prey in the morning. And on top of that, scientifically, I'm almost positive you had your math classes in the morning in school a lot of the times because your brain is it does work better in the morning,
Yeah.
especially if you haven't digested all this food. I'm big into that kind of stuff, just like you have no brain
Yep.
fog, you're just up and at it. So I think that's a huge thing anybody can take. It's trying
Yeah.
to do it after work, which I think a lot of people do. Is like I'll get home from my like soul sucking 9 to 5 and then try to find stuff. Like you're
Yeah.
playing a massive losing battle there. Like get up early and pound that there.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on that because you guys both just seem to be into that too. A couple things I want to put there. 3 hours is probably essentially what I'm doing sourcing, and then there's still some prep and pack. There might be admin, but it's also that's probably an average 7 days a week. That's not just like, right? And consistency is so much more valuable than spurts of intensity, in my opinion. And by the way, keep in mind, I'm at this for 4 years. My 3 hours now of sourcing is the equivalent of 20 hours of sourcing a couple years ago. This is like when you get in great shape, all you have to do is maintain, right? Like now I'm reaping the benefits because I'm so much more efficient with it, right? And this is one, it's funny because I think about this like I think this is very common in the Amazon world, but you start you started as a side hustle and it's really hard to find stuff while you're working a job. Then you get a little success and you're so eager to leave your 9 to 5. And then when you do this more later on, you realize, dude, it doesn't take me hardly any time to achieve the same results that I used to. I could do this like in 2 hours a day. And like, yeah, I mean, listen, Amazon's an incredible opportunity that if you get to a certain level that we're probably all at, you can be super efficient with it, like super efficient. And by the way, I will say, I really like giving myself hard, not like, hey, I'm going to source this morning. I'm sourcing until this time, or like Drew, to your point, this amount. Because something I've noticed, we're having a kid now. Um, you have to be so precise with your time, right? I don't have time to BS on like scrolling too much. Don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of it like everyone, but like I find that it's like, hey man, I got 2 hours this morning and that's it. That's all I'm gonna get today. So let's lock in. Let's wake up, no snooze, like let's hit it, And yeah, and I'm also want to say whatever works for everyone. I do think something's very powerful about the morning because if show me somebody that wakes up at 5:30 and does something hard for the first couple hours of the day, how can they not have some form of success is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if you wake up at 9 you can't have success, but I can't see somebody that wakes up consistently in the 5 a.m. range, working out, working on their business, not finding success sooner or later.
I have found that when I wake up, I've been sick the last 2 days. I've been sleeping in till like 8. I wake up, I'm like, I've been trying not to do any work. Obviously, it's hard to do that when you work for yourself, but I just feel like so behind. It's like when you're up at 5, you work for 3 hours. Like, this is gonna sound like narcissistic or whatever. It's like half the people aren't even up.
Hell
Most people
yeah.
probably get up at 8, 8:30. It's like,
Oh yeah.
bro, I have 3 hours on you right now.
And
Like, you're not gonna beat me. Like, I'm off to the gym and you're just waking up.
yep.
I already spent 2 grand. And that's kind of why in a way. And it's such a hard line to take sometimes because people were like, "Oh, well, easy for you to say you could just wake up." It's like, well, you could wake up early too. It's a choice. Like, did I always wake up at 5? I was always pretty much an early riser. There are sometimes I don't want to wake up at 5, but I get up anyway and like do what I have to do. And I think a lot of the times it just comes down to choices. Like if
Right.
I look at why I woke up at like 8 today, it's like because I was sick yesterday. We were just watching Netflix all day, stayed up
Yep.
till like 11:30, and it's not that I can't wake up at 5. It's like you decide to stay up till 11:30 watching Netflix.
Yeah.
This maybe
Listen.
happens to be like twice a year, but like I think a lot of people when you look back and connect the dots, like, oh, I don't have time. It's like, well, if you're scrolling on your phone, you're watching the latest stuff on TV, you're watching football 4 hours, your team,
Yeah.
like I get it, like you don't want to give that stuff up, but
Right.
if you want something else,
There's time.
something has to
Listen,
give.
there's absolutely time. I don't, and that, listen, I'm not saying people should do this. I'm really not, but like I don't really care for television. I don't watch sports. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. I am not saying people should give that up. It's just not me, right? But um, if you want to do that and you say you don't have time, you're lying. Like you do have time, it's just not a priority. Again, I'm not saying somebody should do that, but you do have time. Like you do have time.
Yeah, and I thought you guys were talking about getting up early. I didn't even think about 5. I get up at 8, so I'm one of these guys you guys are talking about. But for
Yeah.
me, 8's early.
You
But
stay
like,
up late though, don't you?
yeah, I stay up. So like, I'll give you last night. I started like drinking some bourbon with my girlfriend at like whatever, like 10 o'clock or something. And I recorded this Twitter video that I'm going to put out today. And then I write some tweets because I get more creative during that time for some reason. I'm just a better writer, which maybe that's cope, but whatever. I don't care. And I'll write stuff like that. And then I'll just like pound out my content for the night, or I'll just do it's more creative or whatever.
Dude,
So
yeah.
that's like how I work with that stuff. But hearing you guys talk about the 5 a.m., I mean, I probably could shift to that really easy because I don't stay up and watch sports and shit. Like if I'm
Yeah.
staying up, I'm trying to like go through my day and try to watch some content on stuff that maybe I'm going to do the next day. I try to be efficient with my time late. So not that if people are listening, like you need to get up at 5, like I'm sure
Not
that
at all.
helps. Maybe I will do that in the future. I'll definitely try it because you guys both do it. I didn't even know that. but you
Yeah.
can still get the same amount. Like 8 is early for me. I mean, that's like way early. I used to get up at like 10 o'clock in college. I'd schedule 11 o'clock classes and still sleep over just
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
was up late the night before. But yeah,
Ultimately, it comes down to what do you do with the hours you're awake? That's what it boils down to. And by the way, another thing I'll say, you guys I don't think are in this situation, but like for me having the kid thing, the only time that I have truly to myself that does not get interrupted is like 5:30 to 9. So like I know come 9 o'clock, if I get literally nothing else done that day, but I spent a couple grand on Amazon and I got a workout in, cool, right? And so like yeah, I don't think everyone's meant to be 5 o'clock. I would encourage people to at least try different things and figure out what works for you because we all are different. We all have different nuances and lifestyles and things going on.
I meant to say this before too. You just popped back in my head. I think that the important part, not so much you. I think you have to decide when you're going to do what you're going to do. Because for me, it was always when I had like the 9 to 5. It sucked because I did books, so I didn't really. I would wake up early and go to the gym to get that done. But if I was doing OA, I would 100% do like 5 because let's be honest, when you're working a 9 to 5, it's not a
Right.
9 to 5, or like you have a kid, it's not a nine to
Yeah.
five either, right? Like once you get there, like you have no idea what the day is going to bring. I
Right.
do think that was like interesting what you said before. It's like, it's just not 3 hours. I source 3 hours, and it's hard to kind of pin down. For me too, like what do you do per day? It's like, well, like sometimes like maybe Drew texts me like you should do this or here's an idea, and then it's like, oh, like I should do that now. Like this other thing I'm doing, like let's execute on this. So I think like, knowing that I got done what I wanted to get done first thing, like it really makes sure I get what's important done. And then
Yeah.
it frees me up to do whatever.
Yep. Totally.
I feel like this might be maybe that you don't incorporate a lot of this stuff, but from what I know so far, I feel like maybe you do because you go to a coffee shop. Are there little maybe productivity type of tricks that you have? So like, I have little routines I'll do in the morning. I do something. I'll touch on it after, but I'm interested to hear like what's your kind of if you had to recommend, which I know it works for you, but it could inspire somebody else. Like I've never even thought about doing that because I think the hunt to
Yeah.
kill thing, us just talking about that, we haven't even talked about it and we both do that. That could be something that a lot of people incorporate. So any kind of like tricks, productivity, little hacks or
Yeah.
whatever.
It's funny. I don't necessarily subscribe, but like I'm sure like you guys, I just follow so many people online in that space. And it's funny because the coffee shop thing I subscribed to before I saw anybody talking about it. If you ever have a time where like you have this thought and a belief, and then somebody else with some credibility says the same thing, and then you're like, I knew I had it right,
Yeah, I wish I tweeted it first. Like,
All the
dang
So
time.
it.
so I don't know if you guys follow. There's this guy, Dan Coe.
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah.
so this is kind of, I should say this. I don't subscribe to anything hardcore. I have tinkered with stuff with time. What I love about, I did read a book a couple years ago called The Miracle Morning. That kind of has a religious undertone. I'm not necessarily religious, but the story's really impressive. It's like a top selling book. And the fact that I've always been a morning person, I leaned into. But the coffee shop thing is this: it's a clean environment. With OA, it can get very boring. Like, it's kind of just a ritual. I noticed if I'm on, let's say I'm visiting my significant other's family in Minnesota, a couple of times this stuff happened, and then it clicked for me. When I'm in a new environment, my juices flow better, right? There's no dirty laundry, there's no room to clean up. My body knows, I'm looking forward to my coffee, right? I'm looking forward to some interaction with people that are part of my life, other solopreneurs, by the way, and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people, some friendships I've made, and it's clean, it's comfortable, it's social, it's a new environment, and I'm just like, when I'm in a new environment, I'm at my best. I really am, and like my body knows it's time to work. There's no TV, there's no this and that, so like that's something to me, and I love this too. Like I love having this debate with people. Like, dude, if you're telling me a $5 coffee is the reason someone's not having success, you are out of your mind. Like,
Yeah.
that's such the wrong mindset. And by the way, I think I made a post about this, but let's say I told you I had a $150 a month co-working space, right? And it had a cleaning service. You get a free coffee every day. You rub elbows with solopreneurs, and it's not month to month. You would be like, wow, that's incredible. 150 bucks a month, right? Well, that's what I'm doing with the coffee shop. But actually, I'll fill you guys in on this. I bartered with them. I took their team out on the beer bus so I get free coffee. So,
Smart.
so now it's like I'm getting it for free anyway. But the coffee shop to me has been a game changer. I like this is like a local, cool, trendy coffee shop, right? And by the way, I went to like 10 of them before I found the one that happens to be close to me and opens at 6:30 and just had the right vibes. So other than that though, I've always been into like self-help. That's the only thing I listen to. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not neurotic about it. I'm just like I just want to, be the best version of myself, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I've never, I've worked at like I actually found my first OA products at a Starbucks, and I had a warehouse, and I was like, I just need to get out of this warehouse and
Yeah.
just, I think I literally said to myself, like, I'm going to Starbucks, I'm not leaving until I find the first products, and sure enough, I did. And I've definitely worked at Panera's, because they open at 6. So I
Yep.
kind of like that. I'll have breakfast there. And yeah, there's just something different about it. Like, just not. Yeah, there's just a lot of distractions in your house. No matter what you are, like, I could do anything right now. Like, I'm sitting in my office. Like,
Right.
obviously we're doing this, but if I'm sitting at my desk, like, well, I could source, I could make content. Like, I'm not going to make YouTube videos in the middle of a coffee shop because it's not going to work.
Right.
Like, there's only so many things you could do there. And it's like, if you go there to source, that's what you're doing. And I think there is definitely something to kind of your body. It's like, hey, like anytime I do this, this is what I do. So I'm at Panera, so that means work on Amazon. It's
Yeah.
not bullshit on the phone. It's not, listen to a podcast. It's like, no, this is time to work. It's time to find, profitable leads. And like that's kind of how I've done it in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
What I find interesting that both you guys, where you guys are both older than me, I
Yep.
think it is like a gap between like the new age little like solopreneur guy and then the older guys. Because what you're saying about the coffee shop, which maybe there's guys that do this, but the most of the guys I talk to are like me. You just wake up like hoodie on, like slam the caffeine, whatever stimulants you need, and just like ride in your.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you guys are like, well, you need to get out in the real world. You need to like switch up your environment, and your environment's key. Which I feel like a lot of guys my age, it's just like head down, just grind all the time. Which I think it's probably
Yeah.
just a generational gap between like I've just lived on my computer since I was a kid, and like,
True.
when you guys were kids, it wasn't just like scrolling Instagram and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just like I'm so ingrained in my new environment would be like, okay, I drink a coffee today instead of an energy drink, or I take a pre-workout.
Yeah.
I'm like my internal environment's changing, but my
Yeah.
dirty ass apartments always stay the same. So yeah, I think it's just like a generational like kind of gap. Because for me, a coffee shop, I would just go there and be like, I want to be home. Like I want
Yeah.
to get back to like my safe space of like grinding. But it's just I think that it has to be like a generational thing. I'd be interested to hear somebody my age what they did if they go to a coffee shop every day or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And to be honest, I don't think I started drinking coffee till my late 20s. But I think this goes back to just figure out what works for you, but don't just assume what you're doing is the optimal way to do it. See if you like sourcing in the afternoon, the night, maybe 2 hours here and 2 hours there. Maybe you like sourcing one day a week for all day and you mentally, whatever. Like that is one of the beauties of Amazon. It's on your schedule. Um, So yeah, no, it's worked for me, and that's come with some trial and error, and I don't think I have it exactly figured out. But again, I will say the kid dynamic, it's like, I can't be in the house with the kid running around. It's just, I'm not gonna neglect the kid when he wants to hang out. You know what I mean? So
So what are your kind of like future goals with stuff? Are you gonna keep? It sounds like you like your schedule now, and I guess
yeah,
where you're doing the franchising thing, I'm sure that'll take up some more time if people end up doing that. What's
yeah,
kind of like your 3 to 5 year outlook? I hate when people ask that question, but
yeah.
it's in my
No,
He's
head.
gonna ask it anyway.
But I'm asking it anyways.
no, listen. So here, I'll preface. We'll start to get into some life talk here, right?
But yeah, yeah.
So one thing that I love about Amazon, and it's taken me years to get to this point. John, I think we talked about this.
Yeah.
Next year, 2024 is going to be the first year that I'm going to pay myself properly in sense of it's not take out what I need. It's like I'm going to um like enjoy the fruits of my labor. Not I live very simply, nothing like that, and I want to take that money so that I can park it into I'm bullish on real estate. I'm not like a guru or anything. You want to be like the simplest way to become a millionaire is just keep buying rental properties and never sell them. You know what I mean? And for what it's worth, Drew, I'm not necessarily speaking to you, but to the young bucks, dude, buy a house, live in it, get some roommates, ideally Amazon roommates, you know, they pay for your living expense, they pay for your cost of living, pays down the mortgage. Homes always go up in value, always. Now, on the way up, they might have ups and downs, but if you don't sell, they're always going up. 2 years later, you do it again, 2 years later. So, anyway, all that to say, I've dabbled before with some flips and stuff. I just want to take the Amazon money, park it into rental properties, and that's like a financial goal, right? To give you guys some numbers, I'm currently spending like 50K a month on Amazon. I've been in the 90 range for the last half a year, and I feel I just paid off an Amazon loan that I don't think I'm going to take more of. So, like, I've always kind of struggled with wanting to continue to grow it because I have the skill set and time. But what people I don't think really understand is that when you continue and to only scale and scale and scale, yes, you're building your net worth, but it's very difficult to cash flow the way that your profit and loss statement reflects that. So
Yeah.
for Amazon, I'm so dialed in now. If I can spend 3 hours a day and make, for a round number, 150K profit, I'm good with that, you know? And then have time to grow the beer bus, maybe try to pull out money properly so I can buy a rental property or two with time. You know, we were talking about content. Because I'm in it every day, I'm really like in my head, I'm like, dude, I can make a YouTube video every single day. But here's my thing. I don't have the exact reason why or what I'm going to do with it. So it's hard for me to commit that time and energy.
And
Whereas
you talk about all the time.
so it's a faith. It's a faith that this will pay off, right? And I do believe it will because, like you guys, I think I provide valuable information, and I know what I'm talking about. But like, I have to have an idea of: am I going to go the course route? Am I going to go the coaching route? Is that the best use of my time? Do I want to do that? Because I have the knowledge and the time to do it. But then anyway, to go back to the life thing, truthfully, I mean this. For one, I can't see ever getting rid of Amazon. Like I'm gonna ride it until the wheels fall off. At this point, I've done all the hard work. Why not, right? But like I always have this underlying feeling that I'm meant for more, and I don't say that for any sense of arrogance, cockiness. I don't know, but like at the end of the day, flipping stuff on Amazon, it's a great way to make money, but it's not fulfilling to me. And frankly, the beer bus too. I'm very proud of myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm very proud of both. But like as I get older, again, I think yeah, I think it's something as I get older, and it's like I'm so in tune with how fragile life is, and we're only going to be here for so long that I want to kind of start sacrificing money making time for endeavors that really light me up and fulfill me. And by the way, naturally that'll probably make money too, right? So I'm trying to kind of find that alignment of who I am, what I want, and then realizing some wisdom as I've gotten older. Anything you do, it's going to take you 5, 10 years to really see success. So you might as well. So at this point, now that I really know that, I'd rather be patient and then head in the right direction. Obviously, things change on your way. That's kind of a long-winded answer. Some personal, some business. Continue to grow or stick with Amazon. But I think I've kind of plateaued so that I can pull money out. I don't think a lot of people understand that, right? And then Beer Bus, continue to grow that, and then really hope to find time for like, have you guys heard of Yes Theory or have seen their documentary Iceman Project?
I've not, no.
it just really lit me up. I'm just really the
What's it
summary
called?
is this. It's called Iceman.
I'm gonna look
This
this up.
guy did a Iron Man in Antarctica, 30-year-old dude, and he was working a normal job, and he was just like, we are capable of anything. And I truly believe that. I really do. And so, and I have confidence in myself. The question is, what do I want to put that energy towards next, you know? So anyway, that's where I'm at with kind of, but I don't have like an exact vision, you know, just continue to make good decisions. I live simply, make more than we need, and invest them into some appreciating assets.
I love to hear that perspective. I think it's interesting. You're like we're all kind of at the same type of spot doing Amazon for a long time, and something you said there about it being not that fulfilling to you or whatever. And I found the same thing. So the last few months, I've kind of I went viral online and then opened like another coaching program, brought in some good money from that, and taught all this Amazon. And then I've done Amazon for every single day since I've got out of college, and I've just realized that like I feel like I'm meant for more as well. Like not in a cocky way or whatever, but
Yeah,
that's how I've always felt. And it's like, do I want to be like reselling sneakers and whatever for the rest of my life? Like I don't see that being congruent with what I see myself in 10 years. So why am I even doing it now? And me making whatever it is per month and not even paying myself that much money, so it could all evaporate at any moment if something went
right.
wrong. I just started thinking, what am I going to do in the future? And I've wound down on Amazon a lot in the last few months. Like I was on pace to do 2.5 million, whatever it is on these podcasts. People would always say on pace for 3 million, 2.5 million, but not even close is what I hit this year. It wasn't even
Yeah.
close to that number. And it's really because I just didn't feel that that was going to make me any more fulfilled than what I was at now. And I just going to wipe out a lot of the stuff and see the money I've made from Amazon, see where I'm at, and then reevaluate next year. Because I don't think you get in the game of social media, of looking online, looking at all these guys this guy's doing 250K a month and he's 19 years old and all this stuff. But it's like, well, at the end of the day, like, what are you doing it for? What is the deep meaning of it?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will struggle that when they've been in it like a long time, because you realize, for one, it's not making you like bukus of money. You're just making like a pretty good amount of money. You don't have any equity in the business and you're not
Right.
providing any value to the world. So like honestly, you're probably providing less value because a lot of these people are overpaying for products. Like it's just a weird thing on you mentally. I've felt the last like few months, and I don't ever see that sentiment shared online. And I feel like it's extremely important because when you get people aged into the game, as long as they're not trying to like sling a course down your throat, that's usually where they end up. Is
Yeah.
like, damn, what is all this for? Like, where do I go next?
Yeah. And just to yeah, I completely agree with that. And I will say this, the fact of the matter is money is essential in the world that we live in. So if you have to make it somewhere, I think it provides a pretty good lifestyle and opportunity. But like you said, because I have the bus and I have this, right? It's very clear to me, and I've tried to make a point to share this on multiple occasions. Amazon, the way I see it, talk about a spectrum, job and business, it's definitely more on the side of a job, despite it having to be a business, because nobody is buying. There's no equity to be built. And that's why I do think it's smart to do things like courses, coaching. Like there's no shame in that. If you have the experience, I'd rather make 100K a year and teach 50 people how to make 10K a year, right? Than spend all that time doubling my income that way, because it's just for my sense, I can make more money doing that way. That's why like all these people that push, like I think like anything, there's good ways and bad ways and ethical and unethical in every genre, every person, there's good and bad of every subset of life. But like I have no knock on anybody that's experienced and knows what they're doing trying to supplement their business, because the only way to grow and make more money is to spend more money or to drastically increase your margins. So like because it's such a cash intensive thing, I fault nobody. And by the way, one of these days I'm going to figure out what's right for me, because I know if people are going to provide info, I might as well be one to provide it too. I've talked to both of you about this before as well, and I fully plan on it. But yeah, so like I don't like you said too though, Drew, like I don't want to say that it's like an above than or better than. I think it's a great way to get your feet wet with entrepreneurship, a great way to make money. I'm not stopping anytime soon. But it's just not like I'm not going to bed at night being like, damn, I made a difference today, you know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
100%.
100% agree with you there too. And that's kind of like what kind of how this podcast even started. It was more like we always talk about Amazon and we're like, oh man, it'd be great to do something. Like we both really care about this and want to get like the word out about like what selling on Amazon really is. And Drew has really opened my eyes to kind of like what he's been doing on Instagram, on TikTok, and just kind of showing me what he's doing and just following some of the pages. I'm like, wow, like, and just kind of how he plans to monetize them. It really has me thinking about, I totally turned the Amazon business around this year, got out of apparel, and it was like a great year considering like I didn't sell any apparel like the second half of the year, and just kind of thinking about what I want to do next year. And I think you bring up a good point. There becomes like a point in time where I think it's more how much money you leverage. I think at a time, like, I think for me, I'm not really going to want to spend more than 50K a month
Right.
outside of Q4 next year. Like, I'm basically going to go on coast mode and be looking at other opportunities rather than doubling down or trying to triple the business or, yeah, maybe look into doing some coaching or stuff like that. And I think it's just a really hard thing to wrap your head around because there's so much hate around coaching or courses or discords and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you're just doing this because, you can't sell on it. Just like all this stuff that surrounds it. And I know that's not the case and it doesn't really bother me. But at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest disservices out there is kind of there's no hard numbers or no hard lines. Like we've seen the shift where it went from orange bars to now people are doing seller board, and that the next thing, who knows? The next thing's gonna have to be like QuickBooks or something. But I
Yeah.
doubt anyone will do that. But we were talking about before this, it's like I understand like there's people doing these big numbers or whatever, and I'm not gonna say that they're really how much or how little they're making, like I don't know, because I could be totally wrong. But we were talking before this, and it's just like unless you have an accountant who's really doing all this for you, you have no idea how much you're making.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like seller board's great, inventory labs is great, but you have an accountant, it's like, hey, like this is what the number is, but this is how much money you have tied up in inventory. This is how much stuff is lost. Like this is
Yeah.
here's a fee, there's a fee. They're like, where's all this money? And they're like, well, it's in inventory, half of it's in transfer. And so like at the end of the day, once you like minus all this stuff out, you're like, huh, okay. It's not as much
Yeah.
as I thought. It's still very good money,
Right.
but most people are not making the 25K a month, the 10K a month they're thinking they're making.
Yeah. And some people are making way less than they think without knowing it, and some
Yeah.
people are making way less than they try to give off to be knowing it. Neither of which I really care because it doesn't affect me one way or the other. But like now that I'm so in tune with what I do, and I don't think there's too many people doing ROA that are more selective in what they buy than me. And I know what I make. Realistically, when it's all said and done, 15% after expenses and everything is very realistic, right? So that means if I show you orange bars of 100K a month, that means my profit is 15. And that doesn't mean my bank account gets 15 because I have bazooka tied up in inventory, right? And
Yeah.
so that's like honest numbers, right? And so many people are using Amazon loans and stuff, which by the way, I'm a proponent of if you know what you're doing, but like 7 grand off the top goes to paying them back, right? Or whatever it is every month. So it I think it just comes down to everybody knows as a human being what your intention is. If it's to share the journey, to give yourself credibility because you know what you're doing, hats off to you. If you know you're just trying to like get BS views and trick a young kid that's trying to like get his feet wet, like you're a scumbag, you know? Like, and at the end of the day, I think intentionality matters so much, and we all know what we're truly doing behind closed doors. You know what I mean? And but one thing before I forget, John, you were talking about like spending 50K because that's like where I'm at. I do think something's really valuable about putting all your time, energy, focus into, like, if you're going to do Amazon, for instance, up to the spending limit that you're comfortable, and then saying enough, and then so now I have that skill set. It takes me a fraction of the time to achieve the same results. Now, on top of that, content, course, coaching, whatever, you know what I mean? By no means do I have it all figured out. By no means is there a one size fits all. But like for anybody listening, my point is this, like just get good at Amazon, then worry about the next layer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, go for it.
And another thing, which we talked about this in the last podcast we recorded, we were supposed to talk about like how to make 10K on Amazon. And it went down this whole coaching and info like rabbit hole because when I started all this stuff, I was just this guy on Twitter that hated on these gurus for like selling courses
That's
and
right.
stuff. And then I learned like later on that I was really kind of psyoped by the old weird guys on Twitter that just don't know anything about business, I guess, that just hate on all these core like in every other business, there's coaches. In
Right.
your youth basketball has a coach. Is that guy like a fraud? I saw that tweet
Yeah.
yesterday. Like somebody said, "Is the youth sports coach a fraud?" Like, no, he's just teaching what he knows. It's really weird that Amazon gets this knock on it of, well, if you're coaching, you just don't know how to do it, or if you're coaching, you're just like deceiving people because that's really not the case. There's copywriting coaches, there's sales coaching. Like, you could coach me how to make a beer tour company. Like, what is
Right.
that? Does that mean, that's just a normal thing people do? For some reason in Amazon, it gets this weird knock on it. And I've talked to both of you guys about this in private too, about how like just do whatever. Like, who cares what
Yeah.
these people think? Because it's just all this conception. It's just a really weird part of the internet. Like, we're such a small community, and these guys are, in my mind, I think they're very weird and they're very small minded, and I would never hang out with them in real life. But those are the type of people I see that say that weird stuff and hate on these guys. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that. And I found myself going down that hole at the beginning, but it's just a crazy weird thing to do. Like a hater, you're just a hater.
I think what happens is people like to give themselves a reason why they're not taking action. And so if you tell yourself this is a scam or these people are icky, whatever you want to call it, it gives yourself a built-in BS excuse to not take action. Now, I will say this, I kind of mentioned this earlier, whether it be Amazon, whether it be sports, whether it be anything, your local bakery, like there is good and bad people, well-intentioned and ill-intentioned people on every single walk of life. But I truly believe that like the authentic and the good people sense that out. Like I gotta be honest, it blows my mind that somebody would ever buy a course from somebody that's like, I don't know, doing some stereotypical guru stuff. Like I can sniff it from a mile away, right? And now that we know Amazon, that's why I'm not going to just throw a blanket statement and hate on coaching because frankly, I think I'll get into that one day. But there's the right way and wrong way to do it, and ultimately though, like any other business, the market determines what's good and what's not good. If you don't provide value, word will get out, and you know what I mean. So like, you might get people once, and it could make you a lot of money if you have a big audience, but like you have to live with that, and the longevity of it is probably not there. Contrarily, you don't need 10,000 people to buy your stuff to make some good money. I'm sure you're doing the coaching and stuff, Drew. I'm sure you can attest to that. You have like a diehard 100 probably do really well.
Yeah, 100%. I think what happens is I used to think that the people that would push the coaching like down your throat type of stuff, it was bad intention. But I think the older I get, maybe I'm off on this, but this is how I see it. I think a lot of these guys are younger kids, which I'm 25. I guess I'm like kind of in that, but I think they get blood drunk. Like they've never had money, they've never had
Yeah.
attention, they've never had girls, they've never had anything. And then when they get this attention and this social media attention, this money, it just like fuels, it's like a blood drunk type of thing. Like they just go on
Yeah.
a spree of just all the guru stuff, all the money, like fuck this person over, who cares? And it's not that I don't think they're all bad intention. I think it just comes from probably like a deep place of insecurity, and that's how they cope with that insecurity. And
Yeah.
I don't think many people say it like that, but I think that's what I see. And I know a lot of these guys behind closed doors, and that's what I see out of a lot of them. Like it's just I was in a frat in college. I did all that stuff. Money wasn't the biggest thing that drove me to my success there. It was just
Yeah.
different. So I don't care. The money doesn't change me and make me more like I have to chase more. I have to chase more. I have to fuck people over to get more. That's just kind of how I've went through. But I don't think a lot of kids have that perspective because they just came from their little hometown where they were nothing and now they made something and now it's like I have to keep going or I'm going to lose it all and I'm going to turn into that kid I was before.
Yeah, and by the way, I can't tell you what I would or wouldn't do if I was a 21, 22-year-old in that position because I'm not, right?
Mm.
But like when I started with content, I kind of like just had a simple talk with myself, like what am I trying to achieve? What are my non-negotiables, etc. And what do I personally feel good about? And like there's no one right or wrong way, but I think for all of us, it's like, we're all different. Like you have to be honest with yourself, but we mentioned it earlier, but like, yeah, that's one of my biggest things because content takes time. It takes a lot of time, right? There's planning, there's filming, there's writing, there's editing, and it's like it's in hopes of something one day. And actually, it's funny because like I did it earlier on in my journey, being like, oh, I'll get to monetize this somehow, some way. Then Amazon comes along, and I'm like, if I just put more attention into Amazon, I'd probably make more money than I ever could selling something else. But now, full circle, it's like we were just talking about. I kind of hit a plateau where I'm comfortable spending. So it's like, well, why not put more attention into this, So just to give you like some different like perspectives of the circle I've been through.
Yeah, and I was just telling John before this, I saw a tweet yesterday about the longer you can stomach float of no capital and no dopamine and this type of stuff, it's like directly proportional with how much money you're gonna make. And
Yeah.
content's so much like that. It's just you keep posting content over and over and you make nothing from it because you're not selling anything. So it's just your ability to just fire stuff off into the ether and just not fail, but do nothing with it, and then just hope that one day something comes out of it. And I
Yeah.
think that's a tough thing to stay consistent with because it's like I'm getting no return on anything I'm doing right now. I'm
Yeah.
just getting like this many views, and if something flops, you're like, I'm an idiot. This content sucks.
Yep.
It's a tough thing to do. But the longer you can stomach that, at the end of the day, you're just going to become massively more successful than the person that's going to quit because they can't stomach that.
I agree. You know who I think does a really nice job, or my hat's off to their consistency, and I've told him this many times, is Joe. Parfenuk, whatever his last name is. He's
Yeah.
just consistent with it. And like I've had talks with him and like, he's playing a long-term game. And I don't know him that well, but like I can respect anyone doing that. Yeah. So for me, I think my thing is like YouTube because I also think about if you get to a certain size, you can actually make decent money on AdSense, not like life-changing money, and that kind of becomes passive in the sense of once it's there, it continues to just grow. And our line of Amazon actually pays really well relative to other categories in AdSense. And even from other stuff, I'm starting to see like affiliate links and stuff like that. So my thing is like, I just need to find a way to streamline it. Like, find a VA, try to post a video a day. Again, because I'm in the trenches and do it, I have evergreen content and a lot of people don't like making videos, so that narrows down your competition. And then from there, very very aligned with what you just said, Drew. But like, I just have this I do have this belief that like you just keep putting out valuable information over a long enough period of time, being consistent, opportunities will present themselves. You might not know what they are now, but they certainly will present themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, it's always hard too. I feel like that's one of the underestimated things. And I've seen a lot of people come and go since I started this, just on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter. It's a lot of work to do the content or YouTube or really anything, especially if you
Yeah.
want it to be good. And I think that is one of my favorite parts about it is you just got to kind of figure out what works for you and whether that's sharing the journey or sharing sourcing tips. And just kind of knowing what the line is for you. Like I know this channel could get a lot more views if I did certain things or made certain types of content, but I don't necessarily want to make that content just because I
Right.
don't think that's the best for the community or whatever. And a lot of other people make that content, and it's just like it is what it is. So kind of knowing that line for yourself. And then yeah, like you said, I feel like that has been a real big struggle for me. It's like, what do you like? Just putting content out there, sharing the journey, trying to be helpful. And yeah, one day, like I don't know what it's gonna be, but like yeah, maybe it will. I will offer something or not. But it is really hard to do. Just kind of put in that effort and put it out there, and then in one day hope that it pays off.
Yeah.
But I definitely think just continue to put it out there, and as long as people continue to find it helpful, just continue to make it, and then yeah, like figure it out later.
It's
It,
it's all
good,
it,
good.
it's also one of the reasons I really really do like sourcing in the morning because again, if nothing else, you've done
Mhm.
your money generating activity. So if I make a piece of content later that takes me an hour, at least I'm not itching being like I haven't made anything today. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like get that out of the way. Talking about going back to the productivity thing, I have seen a common theme, and that is basically your deep work, your really high priority stuff in the morning, your admin stuff come afternoon because you just don't have, at least for me, I'm not as sharp come 3 p.m. when I'm up since 5:30, right? But
Yeah.
like sending an email or repricing at 3 o'clock, I can do that mentally. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, I think on the content stuff too, a part of that is I don't know where I saw this at, but like how many people do you know in real life that have personal brands? Like it feels so saturated online because like you
Mhm.
have one, like I'm like
Yeah,
competing with you too, like that's like I'm
sure.
seeing so many people right now. But in real life, the cars driving by you on the street, they don't have personal like
Yeah,
nobody knows any of these. So we're so early to this that if you stay consistent with putting out content on these platforms and not only that, but also evaluating your stuff. I'm really big on I want to see growth at least content's fun because it's a marketplace and it's very brutally honest. If your stuff's
yeah,
not good, it won't get views, and if it's good, it gets views. It's just there's no other way to put it. So I think that's a really cool. I feel like we're so early on that in 10 years, like that's what all the kids want to be. They want to be YouTubers and Instagram
yeah,
famous, and it's like we're just these older guys that are already making this kind of mark with all this stuff. And I think it'll only benefit because people will just keep coming online. There'll be more and more kids that don't want to go to college. They want to go online to get their info. They'll get put in your funnel and they'll get your stuff, and then you'll change lives like that. If that's the way you want to do it, you'll make money like that. If that's the way you want, like whatever it is.
yeah.
So I think it's just really early into to see that long term vision and to understand that no one around you has any kind of presence on the internet is just so much bigger than I think people like make it out to be.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, you hear that all the time. I mean, I do agree. We're all essentially untapped personal brands. I will say, I totally hear that all the time about the youth wanting to be. I would say this. I think what we really need to peel back and really ask is what is it they haven't really had a taste of what it's like to be a creator. So really they're probably at a point they want what they assume to come from being a creator, maybe more than being a creator. Attention, they probably think it's wealth, right? But if there's one thing that I've come to realize is consistency is so hard for humans that like the average podcast, myself guilty of this over the years too. Like I think you're in the top 10% if you make it to like episode 5 or something incredibly low. You know what I mean? So
I guess we're
We're
two
almost getting
we
let's
can do
go.
it.
Let's go. No, I
We're
so
close.
but it is interesting. It's a very different time. I think it's very viable, and I think people need to kind of have a, I mean, you just got to start, but also you guys are sharp guys too, but if you just make it for the nothing else but for the sake of vanity, like you're going to event the best game you can win is now having to perform constantly to make yourself feel good about that. Whereas, and if you say my goal is to, uh, you know, grow this type of niche or do this because I'm into this, whatever, and like, you know what, if likes go down and I want to pivot, whatever, like I'm not the what is it called? Jester and King. I don't know, where you have to basically the perform for them
yeah.
just to make sure that you feel good about the quantity of likes. You know what I mean? So, uh, but I think that with that said, there's tremendous opportunity for the people that know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree
100%.
100%.
Yeah, I think another thing that people don't really understand about the whole like long-term career, the consistency thing is the only way that you're going to make it long term. And you'll see other people that'll blow up in 2 months on social media. Or you'll see people that it takes them 2 years or 5 years. And that's just like a thing that happens. If you're a
Yeah.
hot chick online that does Amazon, I'm sure you'll become one of the biggest people in the space very quickly because
Yeah.
there's no hot chicks like that are outwardly doing Amazon
Yeah,
flaunting,
yeah.
you know, like not that I know of. So some people have gifts and some people have different gifts. Like when I came on the scene, people just thought I was really real and I kept all this stuff real. And I'm like, how weird is that? There's guys doing way more numbers than me or whatever it is, but I just have this different type of thing. So you have to kind of find what your thing is
Yeah.
as well. And then whatever avenue, make sure that you show who you really are. I think a lot of people miss that too, of just putting out the kind of guru content. Like, dude, I don't care how many captions and B-rolls you put behind your shit. Like, no one wants to see it if there's not any value there. Like,
Yeah.
I can't, I'll just raw dog a video right in front of the screen, and I guarantee it does better than that stuff every time because people want
100%, dude. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to play the game, you can literally have a B-roll of you making a turkey sandwich and putting some Amazon content, but like if that grows your audience, that's not going to translate to monetization anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I don't even feel proud about that. So like I'm again not knocking it, but like rather than trying to, yes, it's business, you have to play the game a little, but like what you said, if you put your phone up right in front of you and you drop some just straight game, that the people in the Amazon world are going to respond to that. It's going to be shared. All the important metrics that make that be seen more, like shares and saves and stuff like that, way more than a B-roll with just no value, right? It might get more views, but long term, that's not winning,
and you're
At least
playing
Yeah,
a
and
I
I
game.
don't
think
think
that
so.
that's what also makes it so unique and interesting. Like everyone's always like, well, like how do you break out or how do you I don't know, stick out? Because we all sell on Amazon, right?
Right.
So we're all doing the same thing. Like we're buying stuff for low and selling it for high. Like on the paper, that's what we're doing, but we all have very different strategies for doing that. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short on the content, like you were saying. It's like, well, you can make a turkey sandwich or whatever. But it's like, well, maybe we all make turkey sandwiches differently. And like, you know how to get one more crunchier than I
Yeah.
do. And someone in the audience likes it more crunchy or whatever. And as dumb as that sounds, like you just walk to the toaster or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that person like related to that more, or they were wondering how to do that and didn't think to use a toaster or whatever. Like it's a stupid example, but I think that's like a lot of people are afraid to maybe share, but it's like if you just would share your journey and
Yeah.
like what you're doing or how you're doing something. So I think that there's all we all use Keepa, but like we all have our little favorite filters or our
Yeah.
favorite this or our favorite that. And so, yeah, it's not just all saturated because there's just different little pieces to it. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest takeaways for me with creating content is like if you're just yourself, like eventually you'll figure out that niche and kind of it's not really so much some of it is tactics, but I think eventually, if you just keep showing up, eventually you'll kind of find your way.
I mean, a great example, Hormozy blew up in his closet, right? Because he
True.
provides so much valuable information. And for anybody not familiar, this Alex Hormozy used to make videos literally in his closet with no technical gear, and he blew up because the information is so valuable. Now he's an outlier. He's a freak of nature, incredibly intelligent, successful. But yeah. So and listen, to each their own. But I think one of the best things you can do is lean into who you are because that's something that nobody can call you out for, and that everybody can resonate with is authenticity. Like I will die on that hill. Authenticity will take and consistency will take you pretty far.
Very far. That a perfect example of this, and I keep talking about this guy like everywhere I go, is Sam Sulik, the guy. Have you heard about this guy, a bodybuilder on YouTube? So,
No.
like back in the summer, my friend came over and showed me this guy had 400,000 YouTube subscribers in like 3 months. Now he has 2.5 million, and he's just all of bodybuilding and fitness on YouTube. This guy is just the hottest thing possible. And he just posts 40-minute long videos every day with no edits, like just cuts of him in his car at the gym showing off his physique, and then back in his car, same thing every single day, doesn't miss a day. And that
Wow.
guy's just exploded because you can just see it's like when you're watching his stuff, he's your friend. Like even if you're not into bodybuilding and fitness, if you watch one of his videos, you'll just think, "Oh, this is like one of my friends talking to me." You can tell how passionate he is about the bodybuilding. He's knowledgeable about it, stuff like that. It's just like a path to success of consistency and being yourself and putting out like what you know out there and believing in it. Conviction as well. It's another part of that whole
Yeah.
equation.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so bullish on consistency winning. Like it's so simple, right? But why is it so hard for all of us, and us as humans, but it's, what you got to do, right? Like we all know what we need to do to get what we want, but it's hard.
I think
Yeah.
it's always you're always looking for like an easier way or an efficient way, or I also think too it's very different to know both of you and kind of when either like I know when Jonathan's like, oh, I source 3 hours a day. Like I know what he's doing and kind of what goes into that. I feel like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, source 3 hours a day. But like what does that mean? Like I feel like a lot of people think that means, go to Kohl's or go to Wal like no no no
Right,
no.
right,
Like
right.
that's a yeah, that is sourcing, but that's a different type of sourcing. That's a
Yeah.
different level of sourcing. And I think when you're consistently kind of doing what you need to do, and eventually, yeah, when you go to Walmart or Kohl's or eventually you start knocking that stuff out, then yeah, eventually maybe you get kind of deeper into different types of sourcing. But I do think that's one of the hardest parts is I see Jonathan say, "Oh, I only source 2 hours a day." I'm like, "Oh, like I wonder what he's doing." It's probably more efficient. So instead of me just sourcing how I'm doing it and like having success with that, I'm chasing what Jonathan's doing. I
Yeah.
don't know what he's doing, and I could just assume. But if I already have something that's working, like I should just stick with that and be consistent with that, and then it can morph into that. Talking about that, kind of how do you source if you want to get into that?
Yeah. It's funny because there's not a one size fits all. I think the biggest thing I just want to point out here is I probably like you guys, like anyone that's been doing this for a while and had success, was doing the simplest of things, right? It started off walking into a store RA. It took me 5 stores to get a winning product. And then I was off to then I was like, okay, one winning product here. That means there's more. I'm going to scan all of the products here, right? And so,
I think that's a crazy point, though. Like on paper, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah,
you went to 5 stores.
yeah,
Like, there's probably someone who went to one Target. It's like there's nothing in this Target. They scanned like 5 things, but like you had the initiative. You're like, or who knows? Maybe your head is like, I'm only gonna go to 5 stores. If I don't find something in 5 stores, like I'm not doing this. But I think that speaks to like what this actually is.
yeah,
It's going to 5 stores and finding nothing, but being willing to go to the sixth store to find one thing.
right.
But you're like, oh man, if I found this one thing, if I go to another 6 stores, then
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe I'll have 5 things. But I think you have to wrap your head around that.
Yeah, no, I think for me at the early stages, I was seeing all these people online and I was like, there's enough. I can sift through the BS. There's enough here. This conceptually makes sense. I'm gonna find it. You know what I mean? But it's a very, very small, it's a slow snowball. But now I have had so many Keepa charts. I have sold so many products. I am constantly sending in new products that, oh gosh, it's so hard to answer that. I know what I do, but I don't ever really just think about it. It's it's so natural, right? It's like, oh, I just sent something in. It's a weird Keepa chart. I sold 3 the first day. I got to go find 30 of these, right? But now at my journey, that could happen 5 times a day, Um, there's always a site that has a certain sale maybe going on that it's I will say this. So I just have this belief that if you have 100 products, probably at any given time, 10 of them will do really well. So once you build that to 200, then it's 20, 300, 30, right? So on and so forth. And by the way, those other 90 that aren't good right then, they'll have their time too if you're doing the filters right. So there's truly not a one size fits all. Um, but I will say this, if I'm ever stagnant and I'm at a point I don't know what to do, keep a product finder. To me, it's the move. Like out of stock searches on brands, no sales rank and out of stock, decreasing seller count, increasing buy box. Like if you become proficient and keep a product finder, you should never have a day that you can't find winning products. And to get proficient doesn't take that long. What really is the point is now I'm just reaping the benefits of years of data. I mean, how many Keepa charts have I seen that, and how many brands and buys that I've made that now something that used to be on a sale and I bought 8 of, and I've gone through that sale 2 years in a row. This year I'm buying 50, right? You know what I mean? It's those type of things that you can't expedite that. You have to just put in reps, and that's where I'm at. It's just reps. I'm not doing so much different than I think I was 6 months ago, a year ago. It's just I have so many more products, so many more charts, so much more confidence and conviction in my decision making that I'm going to tangent here, but I would also say like to anyone, I would so strongly encourage people to become an expert in a few brands than to be good at a lot. Because now, like there's certain brands, I know every item in their catalog. I know when nationwide the stock is going down, even if the average person couldn't tell. I know that even if worst case scenario, I'm still making X amount, right? And so like what I would say first, you have to go wide, but once you get a taste, if a certain brand wins for you on 5 products, that's a brand worth becoming an expert in. And that means becoming an expert in every product they make in maybe 5 sites that carry them, right? And like that's what I've done. But but I bet a good chunk, if I had to guess, comes from 5, 6 brands. Like, so I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm so locked in on those brands though that I'm an expert. And so I can buy 100 when I know the time's right and I know my best and worst case scenario and stuff like that. So like I said, rambling, but like it really boils down to I've put in the reps, I've paid my dues, and now it's just like there's never a day I can't spend a couple grand if I have the time to do it.
Sounds like you watched that video I just made, John. I just sent him a video. I made it for Twitter, and that's basically you just summed up the video. That's I break down a little thing of like sourcing, and that's the method there. Is
Yeah.
become an expert in a few brands. Try to stay away from stuff everyone's doing. That's another large part of it. And then just if you become an expert, you know when stock's going down, that type of stuff. It's just there's no way you don't win because you just have
Yep.
such an advantage over everybody else, and you have to have some type of competitive advantage here. You can't just do what everybody else is doing because we're all competing on only one thing, and that's price. So there has
Yep.
to be something that you do different to get us lower price than other people.
Yep, totally. And also like another thing that's not just from a knowledge in that you don't have once you become really good in certain brands, you don't have to worry unless it's unforeseen about the IP BS, right? It's like I've been selling this stuff for years. I don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And so like yeah, like but I will say just to reiterate, in order to get become an expert at a handful, you have to try hundreds, you know? But once you start getting a taste, I always say like I never find one product from a winning site, never one product from a sale. There's always more, you know? So once you get a taste, go hard.
Yeah, and I think that's a big proponent too, and I know we talk about it all the time, is like the idea of test buying, and like Drew talked about that in his video too. And I think a lot of people would say, oh, like, everything tanks or this and that. It's like, I don't care because like I'm not going deep in a lot of stuff. If I'm buying 10 of something, obviously there's a place and time. Like just Q4, I've bought multiple hundreds of 1/8 in. But again, there is a place and time for that. But usually during the year, I'm not going super deep unless I have knowledge of a sale, or I mean I talked to Jonathan and he's like, hey, or Drew, like, hey, I've sold this before, like this is what happened last year. There's no guarantee that happened this year,
Right.
but there's just more context on it. I'm like, okay, like I'm good with this. And I think that's where a lot of people, in my opinion, fall short is they see us, or I mean that's gonna sound bad or whatever, but they're like, oh, like they must have a secret. Like what are they doing or how
Yeah.
are they successful? And it's just basically like we just like threw our heads against the wall and like tried stuff out
Yeah.
and test bought. And I mean, some of the Keep It charts and stuff or Asen's Amon, no one would ever buy it if you go by conventional wisdom
Right.
because it doesn't look like it sells. It doesn't have a rank. Or the rank is really bad, but it sells a ton, and the Keep It chart's not reflecting that either. And that's why I think test buying is so underrated. And it's like you're if you're not willing to put up 100, $200 to find out if you can move 5 to 10 of these, you're at a huge disadvantage because there's been listings this year where I did that and I've lost money, but there's also been ones where I've made thousands and thousands of dollars, and it way outweighs that. And everyone's like,
Yep.
"Oh, like, when should you test buy?" Like, just do it. Like, you literally have nothing to lose. Like, worst case scenario, maybe you lose $5 or $10 in ASIN. If you only have 10 of them, 50 to $100. I'm not about wasting money or something like that, but I look at it as research, experimentation, as an investment in the future. If you're having trouble wrapping your head around that, like maybe look at it that way. Like you're not wasting money, you're
Yeah.
trying to figure something out. Um, so that's kind of how I look at stuff like that.
You're buying information. It's a numbers game. And I don't think this ever gets talked about. Actually, I was thinking about if I were to ask anybody who I respect as a seller, anybody, I'm thinking about myself. I would imagine that 10, 15% of my products at any given time, I'm selling for a break even or a very tiny loss. And I'm fine with that. I truly don't care because at the time I made the best calculated decision I could. Things will change. Sometimes you take a chance on a risky thing. Sometimes you think, hey, the upside's there if my stuff gets checked in quickly, but like that's just part of the game. And John, I know because we've talked for anybody listening, like something, a very simple way to do it. I like to weigh my worst case and best case. And if you really don't know Keepa, worst case scenario would be what is the lowest this has ever sold for in the last year, right? That's like a true worst case. And you can look at just like what the buy box was just without getting too in depth, right? And if you're okay with the downside being I lose $5 on 20 units, but if I read this right, I'm making $20 on a unit. I'm taking that risk reward all day. And by the way, there will be times you can do everything right, read it perfectly. There's unforeseen things that will happen. The longer you do this and the more products you have, each one means less and less to you. So it's not a big deal. It is literally just part of the game. Get your cash back and your rewards, make a couple bucks if you break even. But like, that is part of the game. And that provides valuable information.
Yeah, to parlay off that a little bit, I have like an equation that I teach people a lot about, like coaching people on that exact thing of like your downside and your upside. And mine is, let's say a product, the worst case in the Keep It chart is negative 20%. You want to look for a 3x multiple on the upside. That's what I try to
Right.
look for. So a 60% ROI
Yep.
upside. And then if it falls somewhere in the middle, you're good. But that's what I try to like, that's the minimum of stuff I kind of look for there. And there's no data behind that, and there's probably, if you extrapolate it down, maybe that does make a lot of sense, but that's just what I've always went for, and I never end up losing like a significant amount of money because I'm either playing with a minus 10, 30% upside or like a 0% or whatever. Like I try to play around that area, so my test buys are very calculated, even if it's
Yeah,
completely random item all together.
totally. And by the way, if the seller count's skyrocketing and prices tanking, like I can't expect to do anything beyond the worst case scenario. Like you shouldn't even be buying it. But I understand there's times you don't fully understand Keepa, right?
Yeah.
So that's just like a nice safety net. And actually, it's funny. I was thinking about that recently because sometimes if something costs me $5 and I can make $10 if I catch it right, but I really can't lose. I'll go 100 deep, no problem. Like, especially if I know it's moving, but like you get in trouble when you spend $40 on something and then it's not as fast a mover as you thought. And the downside is there. And the upside is I bought 100 of a $40 item that my best case scenario is making $10 profit, right? That's where you get in trouble because you're not creating enough cushion for the inevitable things go wrong, right? Because things will go wrong
The
all the
perfect
time.
example of that is Q4 toys. Like
Yeah.
everyone thinks that they're gonna bet on these toys and then make
Yeah.
this money, and that's like you just laid out that scenario. The
Yep.
toys, the betting on toys for Q4 is so stupid. Your upside is 30-40% ROI,
Exactly.
absolute best case scenario, and your downside is minus like 70%. So that bet is so non-asymmetrical. That's like the opposite of what my equation of you just taking a massive downside
Yeah.
for no upside. So you
Yep.
have to the toy stuff, that's just I see people talk about that one all the time. People want to do that because it looks so well, it sold out last year and it's going to look good. You can't play that game because your downside will wreck all your upsides. And if you take enough 70% and
Yeah.
60% losses, you're not even making money.
Yeah.
Like you're losing
No.
money, especially because those losses are going to get returned. That's another huge percentage of loss you take.
Yep.
It's just if you don't play that right and know your numbers like that and know going into it what you expect is going to happen, and your worst case better not be that bad, you're just going to end up running a break even or unprofitable business.
This is kind of funny, but you know when I really thought of this as like a real life metaphor? I was Thanksgiving shopping, right? And I was doing grocery shopping. I was buying potatoes, and potatoes are dirt cheap. So I was like, you know what? I'll buy 2 bags because if we have too many, I know they're going to be eaten, right? And it's not going to put a hole in my pocket. My worst case scenario is very minimal. Contrarily, I'm not going to buy 10 extra pounds of beef tenderloin. I'm going to try to gauge it exactly because I mean, I would eat it all. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a very high it's a high risk, low reward type of thing versus potatoes. People love potatoes. They're going to buy them. People can be very happy with potatoes. So like I'll spend an extra 99 cents a pound, and if I have too many, so be it. You know what I mean? Just as like a fun real life example, I literally had a light bulb moment. I was like, this is just like Amazon. When it's high reward, low risk, you triple down. When it's low reward, high risk, I'm not saying not to get it sometimes, but like you don't have to go as deep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's like where a lot of people get caught too, is like you're talking about, is like you take I feel like for some reason, I've thought this when I was starting, it's like that sellers that were further ahead of me were taking these risks. Because you'll hear every once in a while, it's, oh yeah, you could take 10%, like you're compounding it, this or that. I'm like, this is exactly what this person is doing.
Yeah.
Like they have the opportunity to make, $20 on this 10% ROI thing. Like they were talking about this. And before you know it, everyone gets on. And now you're looking at losing $20 on this. And
Right.
it's just a total mindset like shift, is that I feel like no one thinks about the upside downside and kind of what. And I've been on buys this year where I've doubled down and I lost all the gains because I misplayed it or other people caught on. And it was just like, damn, like you should have just been happy with what you were able to get and then kind of move on with it. And I think it also goes towards laziness, right? Like who
Right.
wouldn't want to, of course I want to buy 100 of an ASIN because that means I have to buy less of something
Yep.
else, but it also puts my business at a massive risk to carry, just to have like maybe 10 horses in the race instead of having 100, right? I have a better chance. Obviously, there's at a given time, like there are definitely ASINs that totally drive my business, but I always need to have potentials in the mix and always be test buying and trying new things.
If I the few times I buy 100 or just as a large quantity, I am so confident in it. The only thing that would get in the way is essentially Amazon removing the listing, which could happen. But
Yeah.
like if I'm getting to that point, because not only you're spot on, I think people that aren't quite there sourcing, it's like 100 items, these look good. I can hit my spending budget. I'm good. Like I could be done, right? But also talk about compounding. Not only are you diversifying if you buy 10 different items, 10 different units of each, now you're going to get feedback on 10 items. So like if 6 of them are good, now you can double down on 6, not just bet the house on one, which
Oh,
in the short term might be an advantage, but if I have knowledge on 10 brands now, or like, over the course of a year 120, you know, like that's going to versus 12 long term, that's going to win all day. You know what I mean? So it also makes you a better sourcer because now you have to say, I'm not allowing myself to put the bet the house unless that right time calls for it, which it does. I'm going, even if I think it's right, I'm going to spread this out because I understand I could be wrong, and that's going to force you to find more better products.
Very important as well because as the people don't like to say this, but as the market becomes more saturated, which it is because more people are selling and the margins are getting squeezed, this happens in all businesses. Like the margin will keep going down and going down. I don't foresee a future to where we're going to be just finding 80% ROI items all over the
Yeah.
place. Like that's just what happens with all businesses. So the more that it gets squeezed like that, the more important this stuff that we're talking about is, which it's late into the podcast and people might have even turned it off by now, but this is like the most important part you can take about Amazon. If you don't consider these testing different things and compiling this data and trying to find these little edges, you're going to play a losing battle because that it's just way more competitive. Like if you have guys like us doing that stuff, how are you supposed to compete? Because it's just
Yeah.
not going to be possible.
No, totally agree. Yeah, you have to find competitive advantages. And get a couple of the things we mentioned. If you know how to read atypical Keepa charts, if you are super locked into certain brands, like, you know, if you find sites that are offshore or whatever, like that are still legitimate, people don't know about, I can go on and on, but basically, yeah, the days of, in my opinion, going to a site where anybody has access to, and like there's nothing special about the Keepa chart. I don't care if Nike has a 99% sale going on. If it's the products on the first page, it's irrelevant. Like and I'm obviously driving the point home. It's not what price you can get it at. It's how are you getting this at what price, where, etc. relative to your competition. If everybody has the same thing, it doesn't give you a competitive advantage. It doesn't matter what price you get it for.
Yep. Well, don't want to take up too much of your time, but this was great.
That's
John, do you have
awesome.
anything else you wanna throw in there?
No,
That's
I
it.
really
Where can they find you? Do you have any parting words, and where can people find you?
Plug some
yeah.
stuff. Share
No,
your stuff.
this
Yeah.
was great. Yeah, Duke does Amazon. By the way, my dog's name was Duke. I am Jonathan. If I could go back in time, I'd probably change it, but it is what it is. So, Instagram, YouTube, the main places. I use Instagram Threads as well, but mainly just to screen capture so I can put it on Instagram. And that's really it. I really do think I'll be ramping up YouTube this upcoming year. Um, and other than that, for anyone in the game, like I always say, like it's simple, not easy. Like just keep showing up. Um, find people at your level. And you share leads. If it's a huge game changer. Not only that, you can forget the leads themselves. You can ask opinions. You can share something like someone at your skill level. You can literally double your output with no extra work. And like I'm at the point, I'm sure you guys are too. If I have any questions, I'm a click away from somebody being able to help me. And contrarily, I would also say like if you go to people that are not at your level, whether it be below or above, not in like a hierarchy, just like a skill set, like people don't want to just give away their storefronts, even if you want to start sharing leads. So like you really want to trust somebody, so don't take it the wrong way if you're like, hey, I'm just going to hit this guy up with 10 leads and he'll share my leads. Like, we all are realistic. You're going to give up your storefront by doing that. So like, just find people at your level. And that to me is a huge game changer. That's you hear everyone talk about that, but 2-3 people that you can bounce stuff off of, you're going to be golden.
Agreed.
100%.
Any parting words, John?
I'm good. This was awesome. Thanks so much for being here. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.